Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of Whatcha Gonna Queue. I apologize if I appear more pale and sickly than normal, but I'm recovering from a cold. Nevertheless, I am still your regular co-host, Jim Roner.
And I am your other co-host, Alex Rabinowitz.
Yes, and it's business as usual here again at Whatcha Gonna Queue. And for those of you who may be new viewers, Whatcha Gonna Queue is a weekly video series in which we highlight some of the best titles that Netflix has to offer, with recommendations broken down into 3 categories. New to Netflix, where we recommend a new release most worth checking out right away. What the F is This, where we delve into the obscure or overlooked titles buried in the annals of Netflix. And For Your Consideration, where the recommended titles tie into a timely or relevant cinematic theme. And Alex, I have to say that today is one of the most exciting days in DVD release history, something that I know I myself have been looking forward to since July.
Yep. So
instead of any more rigmarole or willy-nilliness, let's just get right into it with Section 1, New to Netflix. Yes, the moment that I am talking about is today's DVD release of Inception. And for those of you who might be newborn, the Amish, or dead and are unfamiliar, Inception was written and directed by Christopher Nolan and stars Leonardo DiCaprio, Joseph Gordon-Levitt, Ellen Page, Tom Hardy, and Dilip Rao as a team of extractors who invade people's dreams in order to steal their buried ideas. In order for a chance to return home, Cobb, played by DiCaprio, accepts a job from Saito, played by Ken Watanabe, to perform Inception, in which the team must plant instead of extract an idea from business tycoon Robert Fisher, played by Cillian Murphy. Alex, I think it's safe to say that Inception was by far the most hyped film to come out since The Dark Knight, which was also written and directed by Nolan. But in my mind, it absolutely delivers because it's a huge, big-budget Hollywood blockbuster with these just amazing, intense moments of spectacle, but also anchored by these really personal, intimate, engaging moments following Leonardo DiCaprio's character, Cobb.
Yeah, and more than anything else, it was an original story. It was a gigantic summer blockbuster, huge budget, but it wasn't based on a comic book, wasn't based on a TV show, wasn't based on a novel. It was off the top of Christopher Nolan's brain. Yeah,
I think that's great that in this day and age in Hollywood where they're very much focusing on franchises and brands and pre-established names already, that it's a huge credit to Warner Brothers and to Christopher Nolan, who as well, a lot of his past work was based on pre-existing franchises, that they can take this idea that cost a lot of money, was just a huge complex idea, and execute it so perfectly.
Yeah, and it's just such a high concept discussion movie. You could talk about it till you're blue in the face.
That is the greatest thing about Inception, that whether you liked it or whether you loved it or whether you hated it, one of the great things about it is that it's so complex with this idea of dreams within dreams and what is real and what's not, and paying attention to all these little intricacies to kind of find out about it, that people are going to be talking about Inception, if not for years to come, then for probably decades to come. Not only in the sense of how does the narrative make sense, but overall, what does this film stand for? There's a lot of discussion about just an allegory of filmmaking. I think that what's really cool about it is that kind of like, no matter what Michael Caine says, people are going to be talking about this movie for like years to come. Section 2?
Section 2. Another character study from the wrestler writer Robert Siegel, who steps behind the camera this time. Big Fan is a dark comedy starring Patton Oswalt. Oswalt plays an obsessed New York Giants fan who, after a series of unfortunate circumstances, is faced with the tragic dilemma of having to choose between his personal safety and the devotion to his team. Robert Siegel, who wrote this movie and also wrote The Wrestler, is the master of character pieces. And again, he delves into the psyche of an extremely broken man. Patton Oswalt plays Paul Alfiero. He's in his late 20s, early 30s. He still lives at home with his mother. He has a dead-end job as a parking garage attendant. And the only thing in his life that brings him joy is the New York Giants.
Right. And it's really interesting that Robert Siegel wrote The Wrestler to begin with. I mean, not to decry it, because certainly we both love that film. But it seemed like it was really interesting that he was delving into this really serious subject matter, because as an editor of the Onion AV Club, which is a hilarious website, it seems like this is really a lot more up his alley in this, humorous, dark comedy sense.
Yeah, it's not a straight up comedy, it's not a laugher. You're not going to like choke on laughter when you watch this film, but it does have this dark, ironic humor to it, and how pathetic pathetic this character is in his lifestyle is kind of where the humor comes in, and then sort of the plot twists as well bring a little bit of ironic humor. But it is very emotional and disturbing with just how sick the character is. And casting Patton Oswalt was a stroke of brilliance. He's just perfectly cast.
Patton Oswalt being very much a nerd's kind of comedian. He's very pop culture aware. He's a huge movie and comic book and video game fan. So just the fact that he's cast in this role automatically kind of gives credence or nerd credibility to this character he's portraying.
And it's surprising how much chops he has as an actor. He's a comedian. You wouldn't expect him to be a really good emotional, dramatic actor, but he is, and he does it. And it's just, this movie is not without merit. It was at Sundance, it was nominated for awards, and I think that it should really be considered by more people,
And it's funny you should mention that, because
Section 3?
Section 3. Next weekend sees the release of The Fighter, the latest film from director David O. Russell, who is best known for I Heart Huckabee's Three Kings and a profanity-laced tirade against Lily Tomlin. Not to be outdone, the film co-stars Christian Bale, who last summer on the set of Terminator Salvation severed his professional ties with DP Shane Hurlbutt. So in honor of these two guys, we're dedicating this week's For Your Consideration theme to our favorite movies featuring temper tantrums. And we realize we're cheating a little bit, but it's our show. We'll do what we want to.
Jim, out of all the ridiculous themes that you've come up with for this show, I'd let you week in and week out make up these crazy, arbitrary themes that have nothing to do with anything. Out of all of them, this has to be the worst one. I have had it with your contrivances, and I'm done with this show, and I'm done with you.
Oh, good for you!
My pick is National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation. Synonymous with disaster, the Griswolds bring the comedy of errors to their own front door when they decide to host Christmas at their house, and Clark's Christmas bonus, which is needed to cover the down payment of a pool, is yet to materialize. Written by John Hughes, the film once again stars Chevy Chase and Beverly D'Angelo as Clark and Ellen Griswold, featuring Juliette Lewis and Johnny Galecki as Audrey and Rusty, and Randy Quaid as country bumpkin cousin Eddie. And Alex, I've been a fan of all the National Lampoon's Vacation movies, but this one is by far my favorite for two reasons. One, I just love Christmas, and two, the original Vacation was a little bit more geared towards raunchy and dark and kind of a cynical comedy, and European Vacation, the characters of Rusty and Audrey, I just didn't like the actors that portrayed them. Right. So this one is by far my favorite because it's just as funny and just as quotable, but geared towards a family audience more so, I almost appreciate the humor a bit more because they kind of had to navigate around those raunchy bits, but still make it just as funny as all the other ones.
And not only are the main cast members great, you have Chevy Chase, Beverly D'Angelo, Juliette Lewis, and Johnny Galecki, but the surrounding ensemble is memorable as well.
Oh yeah, I think this National Lampoon's Vacation movie is better than the others in the sense that the supporting cast around them is great. All the actors, they're all experienced actors themselves, so they bring these little quirks and eccentricities to make these really memorable characters. I mean, some of the cast members you have Doris Roberts, who plays Ellen's mom, and Doris Roberts will later go on to play the mom in Everybody Loves Raymond.
Yep.
You have Diane Ladd as Clark's mom, and she's got 3 Oscar nominations to her own name. Juliette Louis-Dreyfus as the snooty neighbor. You have Brian Doyle Murray as the boss, and then one of the most memorable characters and actresses, I would say, is Aunt Bethany, who is played by an actress, Mae Quastel, who is well known for, back in the 30s, being the original voice of Betty Boop, and she's just absolutely hilarious in this film.
That's great. And, just this movie it's touching. It's heartwarming.
Yeah, and that's another thing that I think really makes Christmas Vacation stand out from the others, is that instead of just seemingly having a situation in which a bunch of characters are crammed together and forced to get along, it really seems like at the center of this one there is a family. There is a guy in Clark Griswold who really wants to make a memorable Christmas because he really loves the people that are around him.
And then it's even funnier when he has his breakdown temper tantrum.
Yeah, for people who have seen the movie, they know exactly what I'm talking about. For those who don't, the temper tantrum comes when he finally receives his Christmas bonus, which isn't actually cash at all, but a 1-year membership into the Jelly of the Month Club, in which he goes off on a tirade and calls his boss a
cheap, lying, no good, rotten, four-flushing, low-life, snake-licking, dirt-eating, inbred, overstuffed, ignorant, blood-sucking, dog-kissing, brainless, dickless, hopeless, heartless, fat-ass, bug-eyed, stiff-legged, spotty-lipped, worm-headed sack of monkey shit he is!
Not quite as bad as some of the things we've been called, but still funny.
Yeah, not that bad.
Yeah. So now that you're a little bit calmed down, can you maybe give your recommendation?
Okay.
Thank you.
Youth in Revolt is a quirky comedy from director Miguel Arteta and writer Justin Nash, based on the novel by C.D. Payne. Michael Cera stars as schizophrenic 16-year-old Nick Twisp, who in order to land his dream girl, conjures up a bad boy alternate persona. Youth in Revolt was an overlooked dark comedy indie from earlier this year. It came out in February, and it's just super funny, full of quirky, out there characters, outrageous happenstances, and setups, and just some really original sequences.
Okay, what do you mean by original sequences? I mean, what sort of separates this from other quirky indie comedies?
Well, for example, they use animation. The movie abruptly just switches from live action to animation. There's some hand-drawn, sketchy kind of animation, and it really gives Youth in Revolt this playful, light tone that makes you not take it so seriously and just enjoy the craziness going on.
Okay. Speaking of craziness, Michael Cera trying to win his dream girl. It seems like in everything we see Michael Cera, he's trying to win his dream girl. So what separates this from everything else that Michael Cera has done?
Think of this movie as Me, Myself, and Irene, the teenage years. So Cera, on the one hand, is playing that awkward type character where, he doesn't know what to say and he's socially inept.
Right.
But then, in order to impress this girl who doesn't really like that, he takes on this alternate persona of Francois Dillinger, who smokes cigarettes and has a mustache and just gets into trouble on purpose to impress girls.
Okay.
Yeah, Zach Galifianakis, Fred Willard, Justin Long, Steve Buscemi. It's got like an amazing cast, and they're all hilarious.
Right.
So Youth in Revolt was a bit overlooked when it came out earlier in the year, but I think it's worth a second glance.
Right. Well, speaking of things that are worth second glances and things that are overlooked, we know a little bit about that here at Whatcha Gonna Queue. We also know a little bit about awkward segues into the end of our shows, which is what this is. So thanks again for watching our episode of Whatcha Gonna Queue, guys. Once again, you can always reach us on Facebook, Twitter, and we got our website, whatchagonnaqueue.com. Speaking of whatchagonnaqueue.com, congratulations to the winner of the 6 months of free Netflix subscription.
Woo!
We are not going to release his or her name because we're afraid that everybody will get jealous and hunt him or her down and kill him or her in the streets.
And steal their Netflix DVDs.
Exactly. So we don't want that to happen. But once again, guys, thanks for watching, and tune in next week where we're going to have another great show.
Jim, you forgot your movie quote.